I am a man who is about to explain what mansplaining is. So, am I mansplaining? Rightfully so, women should be able to have their time and space to talk about their advocacies, their struggles, expertise, and experiences. But there are times that a man with a male superiority complex interrupts the women, hogs the mic, and explains to women something that the woman knows better already. And the man do that in a condescending way. That is mansplaining, and it must be called out. So again, this short video of mine, if I talk about women's issues or about topics that the women I'm with know better, am I already mansplaining? Well, my answer to that is it depends. But before I get into hot waters for this, please watch the entire video to understand my point. Just like any other social phenomenon we try to put a label on, we have to really observe the context of how a behavior or action operates. There are a lot of nuances here. The dynamics of communication when men and women are put in the same conversation. There are many who believe that mansplaining is a bad thing that we need to call out as it cuts off or reduces the women's voice in the dialogue. But there are those who say that women who flag guys of mansplaining is sexist in and of itself. Why can it simply be called being rude or interrupting? Why put man before it? It's as if only men interrupt all the time. That's a very loaded topic, but let's try to answer that by breaking down the communication process of mansplaining. The most common definition in the internet about mansplaining is this: the explanation of something by a man, typically to a woman, in a manner regarded as condescending or patronizing, or in a certain way that interrupts the woman or assumes that the woman knows less about something she already understands. But despite this definition already, it can get confusing trying to qualify a quick talk, a dialogue, or an exchange as suffering from mansplaining, because context do matter in a dynamic activity such as a conversation. For example, if a man cuts off a woman because he was trying to correct something inaccurate that the woman is saying, or if a guy was innocently explaining something he just genuinely wants to share, but unfortunately he just didn't know that the woman he's with already knows that. If a man used a condescending tone due to annoyance of a woman, let's call her Karen, who stubbornly refuses to listen, are these things still considered mansplaining? I know these are very specific examples and it seems unfair for me to be selective about it. But I just want to make a point of how things can be seen differently if we consider the context. I am not alone into thinking that accusing someone of mansplaining can be prone to abuse. In fact, there's an article that argues that mansplaining has been weaponized to shut men off. But I do agree that mansplaining is a real problem. I cannot completely speak in behalf of all women, but at least I can empathize. Like any term, it wouldn't have come out if it's not reflected in society. Women coined the term because of that distinct experience. A domineering man interrupting a woman, not a man interrupting another man, not a woman interrupting another woman, but the specific man-woman setup is significantly more rampant in a workplace, in school, and in media. For us men, no matter how we say that it's not a real thing, that it's not really happening at all, note that our observation weighs less compared to the women who actually experience this on a day-to-day basis. So, let women talk. But going back to the examples I cited earlier, I still think there's a need to really emphasize key elements that should be present before we can say that mansplaining is taking place. So, what are these? The first one and the most obvious one should be a condescending tone. I think this is one of the terms that is hard to describe in words, but we just know it when we see or hear it. But note that a condescending tone is apparent because of the disparity in power dynamics between two actors. One actor who think of themselves as superior is speaking louder or in a mocking tone to someone they perceive as inferior to them. And for this case, man and woman. And if you look at the usual scenarios of mansplaining, like in the office, in an interview, this is evident due to a patriarchal society where men are perceived to get more authoritative role. The second one is there should be a reasonable expectation that the participants in a conversation are to be given an equal amount of speaking time in a platform. You're all relatively equal, but the man disregards that. Therefore, it is much easier to identify that one man who is hogging the mic, who is trying to be dominant in a conversation among equals. The opportunity cost of a man dominating the conversation is the woman there is losing the chance to say her piece. He is mansplaining. The third factor is the topic being discussed. If it's something that a woman inherently knows or most likely relates to by the virtue of their womanhood, then a man interrupting, trying to explain women's rights in front of them, or is negating women's thoughts about women's issues, and the man's arguments are just based on his own opinion and not on any facts, then that is a form of mansplaining. What we need to recognize is women understand better the struggles, experiences, discrimination of women. Even if we, men, have something to say about it, we have to give the platform to them first. They've been fighting for it for so long, and men have been so used to being prioritized, it wouldn't hurt to let them speak first. And then, after they have said their piece, we as men can give our additional input. So if the topic is women's issues, let the women speak first. But there is another layer here about what's being talked about. What about topics about expertise or professional work? Should women always be the one to speak first and the man just waiting on the side? In an office environment or in the academe, mansplaining usually takes place when a man who is so used to thinking they're always right will insist they know better, even if the woman speaking really has a better grasp on what is being discussed, and the mansplainer refuses to hear them out or waters down their input. I want to put a nuance here. The background of the woman, which suggests they really know their thing, should be unknown information at that very moment. And the mansplaining happens when, despite that, the man still questions the woman's input. Examples of this is she is the project manager, but her male coworker doesn't believe her own program assessment in your board of directors meeting. Or she is a subject matter expert of a topic at hand, but another male interviewee keeps on questioning her without a grounded counter-argument during a TV show segment. Then these are indeed examples of mansplaining. That nuance about reasonably knowing the woman's background is a pretty important one, because I think it would be unfair for a woman to just accuse a man right away of mansplaining for sharing his opinion about something during a casual conversation because the woman knows the topic better, but it turns out the guy has no way of knowing that she has a better grasp on the matter. I think if the woman's expertise is not a public knowledge or is not an obvious piece of information at that very moment, mansplaining is not taking place. So, if in a casual conversation while hanging out outside, if I, a man who was talking about, I don't know, pottery with another woman but I didn't know she is an actual ceramicist, then I hope I won't be called out for mansplaining how to make a pot to her. Because if I get criticized right away for mansplaining, I would feel that there is a misplaced anger there. That is probably the reason why many say that the term is an exaggeration. Hopefully, with how I deconstructed mansplaining and its components, some edgy people can finally stop saying that mansplaining is sexist against men. It's not sexism. It's not a prejudice based on your identity of being a man. It's a way to describe a behavior that is exclusive and rampant in a man-woman dialogue. Calling out men's acts of mansplaining is not meant to discriminate against us, but rather to tap our shoulders and remind us we might be unknowingly talking down to women due to a deeply seated sense of being right and speaking first all the time. Sure, people interrupt, people become disrespectful and boastful all the time, but let's not deny the fact that this patterned behavior of a man doing it on a woman is the more obvious case. Wow, I spent a lot of time explaining mansplaining. Why am I trying to nail the definition anyway? The purpose of coining the term is to identify the behavior, call it out, correct it so that men will learn from it and hopefully become better communicators in the presence of women. But in these times where there are many edgy people who are ridiculing the woke society for using these terms like privileges, toxic masculinity, and mansplaining, we must be able to communicate why we are using these terms as opposed to just using them just for the heck of it. If these edgy people who make fun of us never get a chance to understand the purpose of calling this out, they will never learn what mansplaining really is and what it is not. And admittedly, there are some women who are abusing the term and thus they are being tagged as feminazis or overreacting, and that consequently paints a bad image to the feminist movement. We should reassess how we push our ideals and make sure all of the people in the movement are on the same page. So let me ask again my question earlier. Am I mansplaining in this video essay? So this is going to be self-serving, but let's apply the standard I come up with anyway. Of course, there are presence of women who are watching right now. I'm most likely talking to a woman viewer here right now. In my stats, in my YouTube channel, there's a significant percentage of women viewers in this channel. Let's look at my tone and demeanor. Am I sounding condescending or annoying? I hope not. I try to keep a casual tone, just like any educational YouTubers or content creators should sound like. What about the women on this platform or their airtime? Am I stealing valuable opportunity from them by doing this video essay? Well, in the platform that is YouTube, every content creator has their own right to use their own channel or page. I'm not stealing the spotlight from any female YouTuber from explaining what mansplaining is. And more than that, the YouTube community is quite large. But you know what? Before coming up with this specific content, I checked if there's a Filipina YouTuber who is explaining this, and I found none. So, am I not allowed to share my take on the matter and just wait for a woman to speak first before I can post this video? What about the topic at hand? Is this something women inherently know better? Of course they do. That's why most, if not all, of my references and research materials are written by women. They surely have more mastery to this than I do. And yes, I have my own personal assertions here, but I'd like to think they make sense in a communication standpoint. If they don't and you find them disagreeable, I'm very much open to constructive criticism. You can post it in the comment section below or PM me. But as I emphasized earlier, the term mansplaining should not be used to remove men in any conversation, but rather it's a gentle reminder that maybe women can speak first before you. I'm a man and I identify myself as a feminist, and I think I should be allowed to speak my mind about women's issues as long as I don't rob a woman of that opportunity. And most likely, I think I can educate other men who are also watching these viewers because part of the people who are watching this are men. Movements become successful once their advocacy is communicated well, winning the hearts and minds of people. It shouldn't be meant to alienate others, but rather to educate them. And you know what? I learned some of these insights by watching and reading the amazing content of these strong women educators. Note that they don't need me at all to talk for them or to represent them, but if anything, at least I get to enlighten some of the men who are watching. I am Andrew B and I have learned to check my privileges. My content touches 4 topics: thought and communication processes, creative expression, self-development, and social issues. And this video weaves together 3 of them. This is what my share platform is all about. I believe we get to understand topics better once we see different angles, nuances, and perspectives. And hey, if you like this content, if you agree with me, please like and subscribe. It pushes my content to reach more people, and not necessarily women because they probably know what I'm talking about already, but this can probably reach other men who needs more understanding about mansplaining. Once you understand issues more, you can better share what you learned to other people. Bye!